everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be talking about my surprising and disappointing reads of 2022. So we've got the fire going. It is a bit loud, which didn't consider, but it is very warm. I also have a blanket, so like we're cozy here. Oftentimes surprising and disappointing are just 3 and 4 star reads. Like a surprising read can be a 3-star and a disappointing read can be a 4-star. But it's all about expectations. Kind of struggled to put this list together. I think I end up with 6 surprising and 5 disappointing, but I was kind of struggling to get there with both of them because I kind of finished the year feeling very neutral about almost all of the books I read. You'll see pretty soon. I had very few 1 and 2 stars. That will be in my worst. And I also had very few 5 stars. Like I don't have enough to make a top 10. Like my top 10 will include I think 1 or 2 4-star reads, which that never happens to me, and so like it's a little sad. I think that it was kind of a bit of a vicious cycle because I obviously massive slump. We all know this at this stage. I disappeared basically because I wasn't reading. If I wasn't reading, I had nothing to talk about books wise, and also it means I actually haven't talked about any like books that I read really since like April. So there's a lot of books like in the middle there that like you don't know how I feel about them, but the answer is I liked a lot of books that I read this year, but that was it. I liked them. I thought they were good, they were decent, they were fun, but so few actually stuck with me. So I do think that it kind of like made this vicious cycle because like I was in a slump, and then because I wasn't reading like really amazing books, it made me want to read less. And then because I didn't really want to read when I was reading, I wasn't really in the reading mood, and so it was making me enjoy books less, which was making me want to read. And so it was just like this vicious cycle of me not getting good books. And so it just like really messed with my motivation. We'll go back and forth. So 1 surprising, 1 disappointing, 1 surprising, 1 disappointing. And I have 6 surprising, so we'll start on a surprising and end on a surprising. So it's, you know, we're starting on a good note and ending on a good note. Also, I kind of technically have 7. Oh, surprising. Also, I don't remember the names of these novellas. The Mind F series, number 1. I can't remember what the name of this is. Okay, so I read this entire bind up for a vlog, which I have not posted. I do still have all the footage. And so, I read another, it's not in this stack, but I read another, like, very interesting book for me, and like I feel like I still have the footage of those even though I filmed it in like June, because like if I read these books I want to share my feelings with this because it's so out there for me. But also it was like last summer, so I'm like, the moment's passed, maybe you should just delete it. But the first one anyway, I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Like I'm not gonna say it was good because it absolutely was not, and I say that in the vlog that I filmed that never got posted. I say this is like by no means good. Like it is, there are like mistakes and there are things in it that you're like, that's not the best written, but it was so much fun. I had such a good time. Like it was so quick to get through. I was really intrigued. Like I just wanted to keep reading this. I did not tell you what this book is about. So this series follows, is it Lana? Oh god, that's really bad. And she is a serial killer. One day she is out and she kind of is getting coffee and she bumps into this guy and they, you know, start chatting and, you know, flirtations happen. Turns out he's an FBI agent who is actually working on the case that, you know, she's killing all these people. And so it's, you know, it's not actually super romance heavy because I know that it is technically like dark romance, but like I feel like there really isn't that much romance. But like there is like a lot of fun banter and like when's he gonna find out, how's he gonna react, and you know, and then as well as like you're learning more about her backstory, why she is on this path, and you really learn to feel for her and you're kind of rooting for her, and then you're also kind of rooting for him because he's like on the path to discovering this stuff and like putting it all out there, and so you're rooting for the two of them. It was so much fun, like especially that first book. I'm trying to remember, I think it was maybe the first and maybe the third or fourth one. I don't think I like the second one as much. And I think I like the third or fourth one again. But as I said, the first one, it really shocked me with how much I enjoyed it. I had such a fun time with it. And we'll connect this to my first disappointing read of the year, which is the final book in the Mind F series. I hated it with a burning passion. Okay. Alright, I'll just like put it out there because Cassidy was the one who initially told me to read these, which she did not tell me to read them because she thought I would enjoy them. She told me to read them basically because she wanted someone to agree with her that the ending was really stupid. And I do. The ending was really stupid. I can't obviously get into it because of spoilers, but like it was like everything that I had been able to push aside that, okay, this doesn't make sense, this writing is bad, like all of that, I was able to push it aside because it was fun and entertaining and it kept me engaged. And how this book ended, I hated it, and it made me, every single thing that I thought was wrong with it, it became glaringly obvious to me then how poorly written this entire series was. And so it just like brought down the whole series for me, which is so disappointing. I'm not going to go into spoilers. Again, if I will edit that vlog someday, even if I don't actually finish reading the books for it, I'll just post it with like the 2 books that I read for it, one being the wind up and one being the other book. And even if it is just posting those 2 things, because like I go into a spoiler rant for it, and I would be very intrigued for like people who have read it to know their feelings on it. But I discussed this with Cassidy, like there was countless other ways she could have ended this book, so it was still satisfying, but she didn't. And I was very annoyed by it. For surprising, I'm gonna go with 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This book follows Princess Shiori, and she secretly has magic, but she kind of doesn't really know it. Like at the start, like she kind of knows it, but she doesn't fully understand it. And then she kind of starts learning. She is supposed to be getting married, and then she discovers that her stepmother also has magic, and before she can tell anyone, her stepmother curses her so that she cannot say a word, and turns her brother into cranes, and 6 Crimson Cranes. And if she says anything to anyone, one of her brothers will die for every word that she speaks. And then she has to go off and try and break this curse, and along the way she might end up getting help from the man that she's betrothed to, that she absolutely did not want to be involved with at all. And like, obviously it is pretty predictable. It is YA. I had such a fun time with this. I gave it 4 stars. I was a little nervous. I have not read a lot of YA this year. I am definitely growing out of YA, all of that jazz. But I did want to pick this up for a couple of reasons. Number 1, look at this cover. Isn't it beautiful? Number 2, I have read from Elizabeth Lim before. I read the Spin the Dawn and Unravel the Dusk. I think it's the Blood of the Stars duology. I really enjoyed it. That was kind of the year maybe that I was starting to read more adult, but I was still definitely like majority YA, but like the adult was like coming up there. And so I did want to give this a try because I know that I have enjoyed her writing before, and like while it's not a perfect book, I had a really fun time with it, and it is definitely a YA that I would recommend. Obviously if you're not a YA reader, I wouldn't necessarily be like, this is the YA for you. Like, no, if you're someone who really enjoys YA, this is a really solid one. And if you're someone who's just looking for a YA to maybe break up some bigger books, this is a really fun. Yeah, it's a bit predictable, but I really enjoyed it. And I will be reading the second book when the paperback comes out. I do kind of wish I reread the Blood of the Stars duology before I read this, because there was definitely like references to stuff in that book, and I was like, oh, I can't really remember the exact reference. And so I kind of wish I read it, but like it's not the end of the world that I didn't. You can read them separately, but there is like little crossovers. The writing is solid. The characters are really interesting. I love a good sibling dynamic, and there was loads of that in here. I did ship the couple. Like, they are cute. And so then we'll keep on the YA track, but it's time for a disappointing one, and that is going to be Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. So this was actually, I think, my first book of the year, and I gave it 3 stars, which is by no means a bad rating, and I did enjoy it to a certain extent, but obviously I'm a big fan of Jade from JD Ray Reads, and I take her recommendations very seriously. This one just didn't really match up, but this follows Kellen, and he is supposed to have magic, but his powers have kind of never come through, and he's about to go through some trials, and I think basically he's gonna get disowned if he doesn't complete them, and he is basically trying to trick his way through it with the help of Various. I did enjoy this. I thought Kellen definitely went through some growth in it, which I enjoyed because I did not like him at all at the start. He was very annoying, and I still wasn't his biggest fan at the end, but like there was definitely growth there, and obviously it's like a 6-book series, so there's lots of room for improvement. I'm unsure whether or not I'll continue. I think I might just continue with the audiobooks because I've heard that they're good. I did really like Various. She was probably the best part of it. I heard that his humor, like Sebastian de Castell's humor, is like impeccable, brilliant, so entertaining. And I didn't really find it that funny. Like there was definitely moments that I was like, oh yeah, that was really good. But overall, I didn't find him that funny. It was okay. It was solid written. The plot was okay. It definitely picked up in the second half. I got pretty interested in where it was going, and I enjoyed the magic system. The characters just weren't that great to me, and as I said, I think it was kind of wrong expectations, because like it wasn't bad, it was okay, but I really set it up for failure because I had such high expectations for it. And I will say, because I then later in the year I did read Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell, and yes, that is much more my level. I very much enjoyed that. I gave that a 4 stars. I'm going to combine two surprising together because I didn't really know which one to pick, but like I don't really feel like I should talk about them separately that much because they're very similar. They're by the same author, and that is The Girl in the Well and also The Sacrifice by Fringe Pecco. I give both of these 4 stars. Number 1, beautiful cover. I love this cover. I also like this cover. Not my favorite, but I like it. And these are YA horrors from Fringe Pecco. It follows a Filipino island, and there is this person who lives on this island and who knows it better than anyone else, and a Hollywood film crew has arrived, and they are trying to make basically a documentary about like the island and like all of the creepy things that happen there, etc. And our main character keeps trying to warn them away, saying that they should under no circumstances be there, and that there's this whole kind of riddle about this god and how the god will wake and kind of destroy the world, maybe, question mark. And I very much enjoyed it. In this one, our main character is the girl from the well, and is basically some sort of like ghost, and basically she goes around and kills people who hurt children. And then there's this boy, and there is something very odd about him, and there's kind of a spirit that is nearly hanging around him, and she ends up getting involved in this. There is a sequel to this, which I do want to read. I kind of put these two together because they're both YA horrors written by Fringe Pecco, and I had read a couple of YA fantasies from Fringe Pecco, which I enjoyed, but I'm not, number one, I'm not a big horror reader, adult or YA, but I want to make my way through Fringe Pecco's Backlist, and I saw both of these, and I was like, pretty covers, and I have Waterstones points, so I was like, let's do this, and really enjoyed both of them a lot. And as I said, 4 stars. I think I prefer this one slightly more. There's a couple of twists in this one. I will say I saw one of them coming, but there's like a couple of small ones that I didn't, and I really enjoyed. The writing style in both of these are very different from their YA fantasies. Like, they're very unique. So this one, like, there's times in it where our main character, she almost like becomes like disconnected from herself, and so she kind of nearly just sees herself as this like spirit, vengeful spirit, and then there's other times where she's just herself, and like the writing reflects that, and it's very interesting. I very much enjoy that. Same in here, there's definitely some interesting writing choices. Both have great atmospheres, both have great writing. I enjoyed the characters in both of them. I will say this one is actually originally published in 2014, so like there's definitely like some like very 2014-ish kind of writing choices, like with characters and stuff, but I still enjoy the characters. I enjoy the plots of both of them, and I'm very intrigued to continue, and I hope that Rin Chipeco might write some more YA horror. I would say that also makes me very excited to try Rin Chipeco's adult fantasy, because I don't think they have like anything like super unique about their writing style. Like, it's definitely not terrible. Like, it's a really good writing style. It's solid. But like, I don't feel like it's something that's like really distinctive of, oh yes, this is this person's writing. But they have the ability to change their writing style depending on what they are writing very well. Like, you can see that from their YA fantasy, to their YA horror. And that makes me very excited to try their adult fantasy, because I feel like a lot of times authors can struggle to jump up from YA fantasy to adult fantasy and to kind of change the tone of their writing. And so because of the fact that they seem to have no problems changing their writing style, I'm very excited to try Silver and the Nightfall, which I've heard great things about it anyway, but like, it definitely like soothes my soul knowing that they're well capable of adapting. Again, we're gonna connect these two. I think these are the last two that I'll be able to figure out. Yeah, these are definitely the last two that I'm going to be able to find a connection to, and that is Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chipeco, which this one is disappointing, but it's kind of my fault, because as I said, I had been reading a lot of Rin Chipeco this year. I read Never Chasing World and Ever Cruel Kingdom last year. They went into my favorite books. Super surprising to me. YA fantasy, as I said earlier, not my thing very much anymore. This is a YA fantasy, but loved those two. They are tropey, they are fun, they have some like fun twists on the tropes. Like, they are just a good time, and the audiobooks are also really solid. And then I read The Bone Witch this year, gave that 4 stars, and then obviously I've read some of their YA horrors, so I was like, this is going really well for me. You know, a lot of 4 stars, even some 5 stars, and I tried this one. This is an urban fantasy. I did not know that going into this, and I don't like urban fantasies very much, which I also know Silver and the Nightfall is technically an urban fantasy, but I'm still hopeful about that. I knew pretty early on that this was probably not going to be for me. Obviously, not every single book by an author is going to be for you, and this one was just not for me. It is an alternate history of America. I didn't really care about the high school drama, and then also like this magic bird, and it was just like, again, it was predictable at points, but this time I did mind. It follows Tala, and she lives in, I don't know, what's America called? It's like the Kingdom of America or something. It's in America, but America has kings and queens, and Tala lives there, and her parents used to be from Avalon, which was a magical kingdom, and like the whole world has magic, but like Avalon was particularly magical, and now she lives in Arizona, and the prince of this now like frozen in country comes to stay with them for protection, and you know, she ends up forming a friendship with him, and then they have to go back and try and free the people of Avalon. And yeah, it was 3 stars. It was okay. Definitely, if you're a fan of like urban fantasies, you like that teen drama, and this might be for you. It just was not for me. I didn't particularly love the characters. I did enjoy how Rin Chipeco handled some of their like emotions in here. Like, I don't want to spoil things, but honestly, a lot of pretty traumatic things have happened to both of our main characters in here, and I didn't enjoy the discussions of it, and I also liked how it wasn't just clean, oh, I'm so sad about it. Like, there was a lot of anger and lashing out, and it was like, you kind of wanted to like shake the character and be like, I get that you're mad, but focus. But also, like, that's very real, and so I did definitely appreciate that. You know, the good and bad things that people do, and if you only know a person a particular way, how you react when you learn about their past and all of this. I enjoyed all of that a lot. I did think that this story was going to be a lot more focused on Tala and Alex's friendship, and it just really wasn't. Like, based on like the first chapter-ish, like the two of them, you know, we kind of get their first meeting, and then we jump forward a couple months and they're like, oh yes, they're best friends. And I kind of wish that we got to see that development of the friendship, and then we actually got to see them being friends, because a lot of the time they weren't, or they weren't together, and they just very rarely seem to think about each other. Also, I will say that at one point they did mention some Irish tales, and the audiobook narrator did a very good job with the pronunciation. I think there was one word that they mispronounced, but like, I'm not gonna hold it against you. So yeah, 3-star, solid. If you like urban fantasy, you'll probably enjoy it more than me. This one probably won't take me very long to talk about, and that is going to be Blackbird. I was going to say volume 1, but there's not going to be a sequel. I give this 4 stars. It is probably one of my favorite comics I've read. I keep trying to get more into graphic novels, and it just hasn't really been happening. I'm not the most visual person, so yeah. So I've kind of been struggling, but like I'm determined to enjoy comics. So I keep trying them with mixed results. And I tried this one. It was Jade that I saw recommend this however long ago. I saw it on SCRIBD, decided to give it a read. I really enjoyed it. I loved the art style. I thought it was beautiful. I was really intrigued about the world building. It follows our main character, and when she was really young, she saw something magical happen the night of an earthquake, I believe, and she kind of became obsessed with finding out all of this again. And then her mother died, and her whole life kind of goes off the rails. And then like she's older again, and again she sees something magical happen, and she's determined this time to figure it out. And like, as I said, I gave this a 4 stars, but I feel like it doesn't really stand that well by itself. Like, it's a 4 stars because I was super intrigued by the stuff that we were given, but that was with like thinking, oh, there's going to be more developed on this. And so like, just as a standalone, it's maybe not super satisfying, but like, I enjoyed the characters. I would have preferred much more development, which I presumed was gonna happen. As I said, art style, absolutely beautiful. I enjoyed our main character. I thought she was very well developed for such a short amount of time, and I was really intrigued to learn more about her and more about the side characters that we got introduced to. There was some very complicated family relationships in here, favoritism and how that affects people, and also kind of feeling left out of your family, feeling like you're on the outside, all of these things, and really enjoyed all of that. The plot and like the magic system and all of that, I do think could have done with more development. But again, I presume like, because we have like these different nearly gangs of these magical people, and like, again, all of this would have been done in a second or third or whatever volume. Like, we would have gotten more of it. And so like, we don't get quite enough of it in the first one, but like, it was good for what it was. And I'm very sad that I'm not going to get to read any sequels. I don't really have anything else to tie this into, so I'm going to just talk about The Poison Song by Jen Williams. So this is the third and final book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy, and this is a 3 stars. I will say it is a high 3 stars. Like, it is not like barely scraping into 3 stars. It's just, I enjoyed the first 2 books so much that this was a bit of a letdown, but overall, I enjoyed the trilogy. I think while there were some questions that I didn't get the answers to, or there was like just like little threads from the first books that I was like, oh, I really hope that this comes back, or we get more development of this. Some of those things didn't come back around. And I will say the important things did get resolved, but there was a lot of just little things which I loved. I loved the amount of detail in the world building in the first 2 books, and some of it didn't come back, and that is fine, because like, some of it was just there for world building purposes. I just kind of wish that we had gotten, like, I was just really intrigued by it, which, so like, it's like kind of a good and a bad thing, because the world building was so in depth that like the most insignificant things, I was like, I want more of that. And then when I didn't get it, I was disappointed. But like, if the author hadn't gone that far with the world building, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did. So it's like, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, she put so much effort into the world building that I was like, okay, give me more. Like, I'm being selfish. Overall, like, it is absolutely not a bad conclusion. Again, I think it was just expectations. I had these expectations in my head. Okay, so this is what's gonna happen, and I hope that they talk about this and that and this, and then they didn't. which was all my fault for presuming that like insignificant things, like there are much bigger problems in the series, as in like in the plot, not as in like problems that I had that like the characters have to deal with, rather than like going, oh yes, you know what we should talk about. Like, yeah, I should, you know, manage my expectations. I really enjoyed the characters. There are no new favorite characters from this series, but like really solid characters, a very a mixed cast as well. We've got you know, a middle-aged woman as a main role, and like she doesn't shy away from the fights and all of that. You know, we have like these vampire creatures, and we have a witch who's kind of traumatized, and then we have kind of a character who's very morally grey. Like, she wants to do what's best for her people, but maybe what she's doing actually isn't best for her people, but she doesn't really know that. And then we have some amazing animal companions, like top tier. And as I said, I didn't really tell you what this is about because it's so complicated. I can't tell you what it's about. But I did really enjoy this series. I gave 4 stars to the first 2, a 3 to this, but I would recommend the series overall, and I would give the series overall a 4-star. As I said, I do think it is mostly a me problem. I got greedy. Just because this is on my disappointed list does not mean I don't recommend it. I still do. Given this author 5 stars before, so shouldn't have been surprised that I enjoyed their works. But that is When True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read Evelyn Hugo, I've read Daisy Jones and the Six, I've read Malibu Rising. Those, I haven't read Carrie Soto yet. But, you know, those like new kind of following celebrity books. I read all of them. I enjoyed them all. So I went back, I saw the audiobook, I like, you know what, I want to read this. Also, supposedly there's going to be a movie, and I want it now. I just really enjoyed this. So When True Loves follows our main character, and when she was young, she fell in love, and she got married to this guy when she was pretty young, and they moved to like the city. They were living this crazy life, adventuring, and you know, they were having a wild time. They were young and having fun and passionate, and then her husband goes missing, and he is presumed dead, lost at sea. And so it takes her a while, and we jump back and forth between present and past, and so we see her struggling as well with, you know, getting over this huge loss in her life, because she thought she was young and had found the person she was going to settle down with and live the rest of her life with. And she goes through a lot of change as a person as a result of this, and eventually she starts to move on, and she has just recently gotten engaged, and then the phone rings and it's her husband. I think it was brilliantly done. I will say I agreed with how the ending was handled, and maybe that is because my favorite person won. Touched on grief so well, just seeing the love she has for both of these people, and the different love that she has for these people. Through all of this stuff, she clings on to her family, which she had never done before, and seeing the development of her like familial relationships as well as these 2 romantic ones was also so well done and so beautiful. Like, she became so close with her sister and her parents again, and she finds herself drawn back to the place that she never wanted to return to. The balance of it all was so well done. I had such a good time with this book. I read it on an audio, and I do recommend the audiobook. And as I said, I do really want to watch the movie. I don't know when it's coming out though, because like, I'm gonna look it up actually. It is saying that it was supposed to come out in 2022, but obviously it did not. Okay, so now it's expected April 13th, 2023. I don't think that like she like made it clear, like, oh, obviously this person is better for her. Like, I think she did a really good job of balancing why, I think Emma was the main character's name, which I think that tells you a lot that I forgot the main character's name, but I still remember the details of the book so well. But I think she did a really good job of like balancing why she loved these 2 people and like the different kind of love she had, and how just because they're different doesn't mean that they're less important. Though I do think you can probably guess pretty early on, like, oh, this is probably where it's going, but like, I don't think that takes away from it. I think still just like seeing the development of everything is still very good. So final disappointing read of the year, probably my most disappointing, if we're being honest, is Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. I'm not going to talk about this too, actually, I was going to say I'm not going to talk about this too long, because I posted a vlog about it, but I think I ended up deleting that vlog. But I gave it 3 stars. Basically, the only way I can describe it is underwhelming. Like, I can't remember whether or not I've talked about it. I think I might have mentioned it in Knock It Out November, but I was supposed to film another vlog and then I ended up deleting it all because I hated it. But basically, underwhelming. Like, what was the point of it? What was the point? Number one, I feel like Rick Riordan really could have done with a reread of Percy Jackson and the Olympians before he wrote this book, because there's just things that happen that I'm like, that's not how the characters are. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just because we're always in Percy's point of view. So, you know, we're seeing different perspectives now. So we're just seeing like all of Percy's bias. But like some of it just like, I don't think so. I think he just kind of forgot what his characters are like. Then number 2, all 5 books of build up for about 10 pages of battle. Are you kidding me? All of that for nothing? Like, and then last but not least, it absolutely is not like Percy, Annabeth, Hazel, and Frank. Why are they there? At the end of the day, this could have just been Jason, Piper, and Leo's story, because that is who the book starts with. The series, because The Lost Hero is their book, and that is who this series basically ends with. They are the majority of the points of views, which, funnily enough, the characters I found the most boring. Didn't really connect with these characters. There was no Percy and Annabeth perspective, and we got very little of them, especially considering what they went through in this series, and that just was not developed at all. And obviously, I kind of continued the series because of them. And then they're just like not there basically at all. They're background characters. And then Hazel and Frank, like I did actually quite enjoy them in Son of Neptune, and they also kind of fell to the side. It honestly could have been so the first book, the last book, and then those middle 3 books. I mean, you can basically just get rid of Son of Neptune. So then books 3 and 4, you can basically just take out all the other stuff and just put their point of views, combine them together, and you've got a trilogy. Like, that's big. Like, because yes, big things happen, but then like when you like actually think about the grand plot, you could have changed it out for different characters. I will say the one positive was Nico and Reina. I ended up really enjoying them. I really enjoyed their friendship, and it just kind of like their kind of friendship nearly reminded me more of the original series than anything else, because I mean, everyone, I see fan art and fan posts and all this about the heroes of Olympus and how great friends they are, and I'm like, where? They are workplace acquaintances at best. And that is it. That is all I have to say. And like, I just felt like Rick Riordan put no effort into actually developing these friendships. He was just like, okay, there's tension here, and then, oh, now they're all good, they're all friends now. I'm like, when? I didn't see this, and I'm still not seeing it. I see no chemistry between them as a group of friends. He could convince me in one book that Percy, Annabeth, and Grover were friends. He could convince me in one book that Nico and Reina were friends. He could convince me in one book that Percy, Hazel, and Frank were friends. So why couldn't he convince me in like, we'll say 3 books, that Percy and Jason are friends, or, you know, Jason and Frank? Like, I was not convinced that any of them were friends. This is like not to do with Blood of Olympus, but I really don't understand the whole like Percy versus Jason. Like, Percy never wanted to be a leader. Like, this isn't what I'm talking about. Is like, Rick Riordan really needed to read his own books, because like he kind of got Percy's character wrong a lot. Like, he was kind of 50-50. Like, sometimes they're like, oh yes, that is totally Percy, and then other times I was like, Percy's not like that. Like, Percy's not gonna get in a fight over, oh, I want to be leader. Like, No, he's gonna be like, yeah, Annabeth should be leader. I'm not sure what he's trying to be like, oh yeah, because like remember how Talia and Percy were fighting over it? I'm like, they weren't fighting over being leaders, they were fighting over who was Annabeth's friend. That's what their whole underlying tension. We're both children of the big three. Let's fight about it. Like, that wasn't their issue. Their underlying issues was, oh, Annabeth prefers them to me. Like, so, yeah. And they still had a better fight. Like, the fight for the leadership was weaker than the fight of, oh, I want to be Annabeth's best friend. And that is the team. Also, I'm gonna say it here because I'm on a Percy Jackson rant. So there are two different lists because I see people on like book Twitter fighting over who's the most powerful demigod. And I'm gonna say right here, right now, there are two different, you have to put two different criteria, because are we talking about who's the most powerful, like raw power, or are we talking about who would actually win in a fight? Because there's two different answers, because raw power is Nico. But who would win in a fight is Percy. Percy would beat any of them. Nico, yes, he is incredibly powerful, but my dude will spend like 5 minutes fighting and need a nap. Percy has enough experience of battle, because he's been doing this since he was 12, that he can avoid Nico for 5 minutes until Nico needs a nap, and then be like, okay, fight time. And also he can just like stand in the ocean for those 5 minutes and like be constantly rejuvenated. Because unlike Nico, water actually gives him strength. So that is the tea. So yeah, I just wanted to say that right now, because I saw people fighting about it on Twitter, and I know that I'm right, you're wrong. So then, one final book to talk about, one final surprising read. Also, I've been filming for 52 minutes. I'm gonna have to cut so much of this out. Radiance by Grace Raven. This is kind of a monster romance, but like also not really. It's a fantasy romance. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I did a whole video where I read fantasy romance, because every year I do a different kind of romance video. So like, not last year, 2021, I did just like standard romance, contemporary. Then this year I did fantasy romance, and I read a couple of books for those. A lot of fails in it. I think I read 4 books. I think I had 2 2-stars, a 3-star, and a 4-star. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I think I figured it out. Because with fantasy romance, they're trying to balance the fantasy and the romance. And I realized, I don't think I want that. This was a romance book in a fantasy setting. That's what it was. And I ate it up. I loved it. This book, it starts, and our 2 main characters are in an arranged marriage. And he's kind of like this monstrous species, and she's like human. And they bump into each other, and they don't at first realize that they're talking to their future husband and bride, and they are insulting each other basically. Like, they're being friendly. Like, she's like, oh my god, I just like, he's like, yeah, you're like so hideous, and she's like, you are too. And then they realize that they're getting married, and they're like, well, at least I know they're friendly. So it's kind of like a friends to lover kind of thing, which I know is not everyone's thing. So like, they pretty quickly become friends, but they are both like, you are so hideous, I can never be attracted to you. So like, that's a very interesting dynamic. And then obviously they do fall in love, and so it's just like really sweet. And I do know that there are sequels, but I do think the sequels are gonna focus more on the fantasy element, so I'm kind of nervous to try them. But yeah, I loved it. I loved the banter between them. I loved like the sarcasm and their jokes, and I loved the development of it, and how they like slowly became to like really appreciate each other and love each other, and it was just so sweet. So yes, I totally recommend it. So yes, so there we go. Those are 6 surprising and 5 disappointing reads of 2022. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.